Good morning, children. Hi. So, how are you all today? Fine, right? Yeah. Be happy, anyways. And here, let me first ask you: did you actually go through that chapter which we have did previously? The topic, what was it? Classification of elements, right? Did you? How was it? I hope it was quite easy, right? There's nothing much. So today here, let's not continue the chapter. We'll keep it for the next class. Now let's start a new chapter so that you don't get bored, right? New with a new subject. What is it? That's your first language. It is your English. Okay. So let's start English today. Just open your book. For English, it's not like chemistry or any other science subjects. You should keep your book in the front, okay, because it's very important. There's no use of listening to me. It's not a small story as a 10th standard students, like it's not like small kids. So you should basically have your book with in front of you, okay. Only then you can listen to my teaching, okay. Yeah, let's start. Open your book. So in your first language, what all are the contents or what all should we complete? We'll just look into it. So we have, you can see in page number, there's no page number, but before that is in your first, that is your index page, you'll have the contents there. So basically you have 5 prose, that is short story type, right? Prose. Then poetry is 5 again, that is your poems, and non-detail, again you have 2 stories there. Yeah, so these are the things what we have to go through. So let's start today with a good one, right? Something which motivates you. Let's start with the lesson number 3, the Gift of Magi. It's very interesting story. Actually, the story even I have learned, I think when I was in my 8th probably, I think so, I don't remember. But I remember that I have studied the story and I had a teacher called Janki. She was very good at English. So let's start with that chapter, that lesson. It's written by author named O. Henry. That's in your 32, page number 32. You can just open that page. So let me open. Yeah. So you need a textbook. Even I too need a textbook now. Let's start, right? So are you all ready? Yeah, let's do it. So it's our lesson number 3 in your textbook. The name is Gift of Magi or Gift of Magi. Okay, since you like Maggie, you can call it as Maggie, or you can also pronounce it as Magi. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So as we already know, it was written by the great author called O. Henry. Now first let us go in a pattern. So first I will just give you a brief introduction on the name, the meaning of the, like how did the name of this lesson come from, like how they ended up in bringing up such a name, Gift of Magi. It's something different, right? So let's see the meaning of that title. Why did he write that, give this title for this particular story? I think you have the description again. Just open page number 37. You will have something called a glossary. That means meaning only, basically, right? Yeah, let's if you can go through it, you can see that Magi. The Magi were 3 wise men who brought gifts to the newborn Jesus. According to the Bible, the Magi were 3 kings. The names are also given. It says Casper, Melchior and Balthazar, who traveled to Bethlehem. Bethlehem was where Jesus was born, okay, from somewhere in the east, probably Persia. So what does this say? The name, the Gift of Magi, came from a historical book, right? Christian book, which is that Bible. So what does this say? I don't want to tell you the full story of our what is there in Bible. So let me just brief you what this name, like from where did it come. Usually you have, if you are celebrating Christmas, well and good, you will know, or else people, you would have seen that during Christmas they exchange gift, right? All are very happy. I think even you may also play Secret Santas in your class. Do you? We used to play. Even in our college days, we used to play. Actually, we just gift each other during Christmas. Though we don't celebrate Christmas, they are all people there in our class, but still we play. For it's something interesting for us. Like we play Christmas Santa, so, or secret Santas. So that's gifting each other. Why is it? To make others happy. Actually, we are sharing happiness, right, throughout. That is the main concept there. So how did this concept come from? Is from this Bible. What is it? Three wise men. Who are those? Three wise men were called as Magi's or Maggies, as I said. They were the first one who came to Jesus to gift when he was born. When our Jesus was born, these wise men came from Persia to Bethlehem to gift them. Give Jesus something special. So from there onwards, they started this procedure called as gifting during Christmas. Okay, that's how somewhere it's related to our story. So we'll just see how it is. So that's about our title. So let's start with our chapter. Okay, yeah. Now I'll give you a brief introduction before we are I read the entire lesson here. So let me give you a gist, because you should have, right, when I go through, you should have a basic idea. So it's basically The Gift of Magi is a short story written by, I have repeated this twice and again I'm repeating you, it's written by O. Henry, which tells us the story of a cute couple, young couple. They were very young couple, cute young couple, who actually sacrificed their worthiest thing that they possessed to gift each other. Okay, so like in order to make others happy, that when we sacrifice something and we do something to others, it makes us extra happy, right? Like when you have let me tell you a small example. You have two chapatis, one of your friend is hungry, there by mistake maybe his food got spilt over and he's sitting there hungry. So what will you have only two chapatis and you're very hungry, but when you see your friend, you just sacrifice, right? You tell him, I have an extra chapati, I have two, so I can have one and you have one, right? That's a sacrifice. So you will also feel happy, he is also feeling happy. That's a special happiness that you build in, right? So it's the same thing. When you do sacrifices, you have an extra happiness. Now let's start. This is all about gist. Okay. Yeah, before going into the detail, let me tell you this some conclusion also of the story. It's like these couples, as I told you, they sacrificed their worthiest thing that they possessed, but then there's a moral of the story. You know, the moral of the story is really very important and valuable in all of our lives actually. We'll just see how it is, but I'll give you a brief. As I told you, it's like it says, what does it says is like it's very something that you possess, like very worthy, whatever you think, the materialistic things, what you think that's very valuable for me, maybe your doll or your dress or anything, is actually at the end it's like it has no value. Okay, but there's something beyond that which has very valuable thing, that's their what they sacrifice, right? So their pure love towards it, between themselves, their care, their concern, that was more valuable than the materialistic love they could see, right? That was a moral of the story. So let's start. So I think you will be curious to know what happened, right? So we'll see how it is. Let's start with the story. We have a pre-reading activity. It's something you must have received many gifts. Which one did you like the most? Why? You can just think yourself, sit and think. Okay. Yeah. So because you may have received many of the gifts, so I don't want to list you everything. So you can, whenever you get time, you can start it. Now I'm gonna start. So what you have to do is open your textbook and just look into the sentences what I go through or tell in detail. First I'll just read the paragraph, each paragraph. I won't explain you the paragraph, then I'll just underline as and when I'm going through the paragraph and the sentences. I'll ask you to underline certain words, and I'm gonna tell you the meanings. So you just write it down, then later I'll explain, so that once you read, the meanings will already be there, so you can just grasp it faster. Okay, let's start like this. So the first paragraph goes like this: $1.87, that was all, and 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved 1 and 2 at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burned, with a silent imputation of parsimony that such close stealing implied. 3 times Della counted it, $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. So just underline the words which is same. That's in your second line, bulldozing. Then third line you have one's cheeks burned, so underline cheeks burned. Then imputation of parsimony, underline that phrase, that is set of 3 words, imputation of parsimony. Then then 3 times Della counted it. All those are normal sentences, you can understand it, right? These are the important words. So I also write down, I'll tell the meanings in order, you just write it down above. Okay, so first one was bulldozing. Bulldozing is basically bargaining. What is it? Bargaining. Just write it down on top. Have you written it? I'll give you some more time. Bargaining, bulldozing. Okay, next one is one's cheeks burned. Cheeks burned is nothing but getting mad at someone or getting angry. Have you written it? Next is silent imputation of parsimony. Again, this is bargaining only. The struggle in bargaining, that's what it says. Is it done? So these are the difficult words, or the which you may not know the meaning. Okay, they are not difficult words, but maybe you don't know these meanings, so you just have written this, right? Now let's go in detail. So $1.87, what is the same? The first paragraph first says the character name is, you can see that it's Della. Okay, the character name is Della. And what is the scene? It says she was counting the amount what she had saved. Okay, and how much was it? It was $1.87, out of which 60 cents were in pennies. Pennies basically means coins. Okay, so after that, how did she save those amount? It's about it, right? How is it? They are telling bulldozing, by bulldozing the grocer, vegetable man, butcher until one's cheeks burn. That means, how did she save? She started bargaining with all the people, who? Grocers, vegetable man, the butcher man, everyone. She started bargaining until when? Until the other person, that is the butcher man, maybe the vegetable or the grocer man, started getting mad at her, started arguing at her or getting angry at her. Till that point she begged for bargaining, begged for saving it. So what did she? So she bargained again and again, reducing the price, until one said no, we are not giving, or getting angry on her. Until that point she started bargaining. Why did she do C. Until one with the silent imputation of parsimony. What does that say? That says basically that's not her character, but she has a lot of pain within to do get into that character. She wanted to somehow save. She had no other option, and that's what made her reach at that position. Okay, so she has a lot of pain, but still she is doing that. What? Getting into the bargain with other person. Now, and what did happen? She bargained, she saved the money, and now she is counting it. She counted it and it was $1.87, and she is not sure, like she's uncertain about it. And again she took all the time, she's counting it again and again and again. How many times? 3 times, not 1 2, it's 3 times. For making it confirm, she counted it again and again, and still it was just $1.87. There was not a penny more, not a penny less. It was same, and maybe that was not sufficient for her. That is the scenario what you can see there. Maybe that's the scene, background scene. What are they indicating by telling 3 times they counted, but still it was just $1.87. Okay, yeah. And the last line says the next day would be Christmas. That means it was a Christmas Eve. That is a previous night. Okay, previous night of Christmas. It was a Christmas Eve. Okay, so once more, shall I read that paragraph? I'll read it fast so that now you have to try analyzing it. Okay, now $1.87, that was all, and 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved 1 and 2 at a time by bulldozing the grocer, vegetable man and the butcher man until one's cheeks burned, with silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it, but again it was just $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. Now you have got the gist of the first para, right? Not the gist, I think, yeah, an explained view. Now let's go to the second para. They were clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles and smiles, with sniffles predominating. So that's the second para. Now write down the meaning and underline the words. First, they were clearly nothing to do but flop down. Underline flop down. It means fall down. On the shabby little couch. Shabby little couch, underline it. Shabby means dirty. Couch, sofa. And howl. Howl is basically a loud cry out of pain. Okay, so cry. Now, so Della did it, which instigates, which means initiates to do something. It depends. It may be on like good things or bad things. It may be according to our circumstance what we face. So we are forcefully initiated or forced to do something. Okay, that is instigate. The moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles and smiles. So underline sobs, sniffles, smiles. Sobs means cry out loudly. Okay, sniffle is sniffing. When you cry, you do this, right? Sniffing. Yeah. And then smile. Smile is smile. So with sniffles predominating, what does that mean? Basically means, when do you sniffle? When you are laughing, you don't do that. When you cry, so it indicates more of cry. So I'll explain you in detail now. So I hope you have all underlined. So let's start. So here they are basically trying to explain the situation what she is facing. What after counting, what was her emotion in there. Okay, so as I told you, the first para is telling us that the amount she saved it with a lot of pain and effort, and then it was not actually enough for her. That was probably not enough for something what she was wanted, right? She could save only very less amount for her. So After that, what is her scene? So she was helpless, so she couldn't do anything else. What did she do? What she could do is just fall down, cry loudly, and just to get rid of her pain. And where did she actually lie down and cry? On her very shabby sofa. Shabby means basically dirty sofa. So you can just imagine what is the situation of her. She has a shabby sofa, so it means dirty sofa, and she could just fall and she's crying over there. So take a look at that now. So Della did it. So she did that. What she could do was only that. She was helpless and she did that. Now, which instigates? So what made her do that was her situations, her circumstance. She had very less amount which is saved, and that made her do that. So instigate, she was forcefully made to undergo in such a situation. And the last sentence here, the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles and smiles, with sniffles predominating. What does that mean? That's a very important line over them, which means our life is a mixture of everything. Like we have happiness, we have sad also. But we for us, for becoming for 10% of happiness, other 90% are sadness. We have to undergo that 90% sadness to achieve just 10% of our happiness. So that's the word describing, those sentences are describing us about this truth in about our life. So that's our second para. Let's go to the third para now. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second stage, take a look at the home. A furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beggar description, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for Medicancy squad. So, let's underline the words. Let's start with the word beggar description. Beggar description probably means it's something which is impossible to describe. Beggar description, which is like beyond the description. Okay, so you can write impossible to describe. Next, last two words, that is Medicancy squad. That basically means beggars. Okay, so Medicancy squad, beggars. Yeah, these are the two different difficult words I feel. Yeah, let's see what is the meaning. So while the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, what does it mean? So her first was like, after all doing all that with pain, she started bargaining and she saved some amount that wasn't actually sufficient for her, and after seeing that, counting it again and again, she was not happy and she felt sad. She started to cry out loudly. What she could do, she was very in a helpless condition. She just fell down on her sofa. She was crying aloud, realizing the fact that her all happiness, for just a small piece of happiness, all her sorrows are. So that was her first stage. Now she is going to the second stage. What is it? Let's see. So the mistress is here, Della. Take a look at the home. What's her? That's if we have known till there that what is her present situation. So let's see what is about her home. So they are describing it like this. Take a look at the home. A furnished flat at rupees like $8 per week. $8 per week is actually quite less comparatively. Okay, $8 per week for a well furnished. It was a well furnished flat. That means it had all the basic furnitures required for them, but it was at $8 per week. It did not exactly beggar description. That means it actually wasn't having a it was impossible to describe the actual situation of that flat looking from outside then, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for beggars. So though they had it was well furnished, but yet it was for $8 per week, so it had from a outlook, it was like for a so cheap that it was for mainly for beggars. It had that kind of impression on it, though that did not describe, like it was not describing as such. Within it was well furnished, quite furnished, but then still it had a beggar background. Okay, yeah, now that's the third para. Now let's move on to the fourth para. It says, in the vestibule below was a letter box into which no letters would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. Okay, so this is the para. So underline the words vestibule, write the meaning, it means entrance, okay, or house entrance. Letterbox, you know, right, where they put this post or any letters there. Yeah, with no letter. Electric button is basically our bell, our doorbell. Okay, and then it's a phrase again, appertaining thereunto, that means connected or fixed to something. Okay, so appertaining thereunto is a single, it's not a single word, it's a phrase that indicates a single word, that means connected or to fix to something. Okay, so yeah, that's it. And I think card bearing the name is basically a name board. Okay, let's see the meaning now. In the vestibule below was a letter box into which no letters would go. So that basically says in the entrance of their home. At the entrance there was a letter box, but no letters were there in it. That means there were no one to put them a letter, or no one to write for them, or no one who would care for them, right? It indicates that loneliness there. And an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Yeah, just underline this word also, coax a ring. Basically mean there were no one to just make a try to ring or succeed in ringing the bell. Okay, that's coax basically. Yeah, so I'll repeat again, an electric button from which no mortal finger would coax a ring. That means they had an electric bell too, but there were no one who just wanted to ring the bell. That means again it is indicating the stage of their loneliness, where they had no supportive or relatives or no other visitors in there, right? Yeah. Next line, also appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. So what does this say? It says, first it says there was a letter box in the entrance, at the entrance, and after that this is a ringing bell, a doorbell, then fixed to that or near to that, what is it? There was a name board named, what was the name on it mentioned in it was Mr. James Dillingham Young. That was the name, maybe that was the name of the owner, but here it is actually husband of Della. Okay, yeah, so that's our fourth para. Let's go to the fifth para now. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity, when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim, and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. So this is the para. Just underline few words in it. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze. So underline flung. That means flew. Probably which means he had travelled. Okay, to the breeze during a former period. That means underline former, which means before. Okay, period of prosperity, a good financial well-being. Okay, financially they were stable, prosperity, when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now when the income was shrunk, means reduced, underline shrunk, reduced, to $20, though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. Underline contracting to a modest and unassuming D. Underline the entire set of words there. So contracting is again reducing. Okay, and to a modest means simple, humble. Okay, and unassuming D. Unassuming is that we cannot assume, right? And D, it's a short form for Dillingham, nothing else. Okay, so they are just indicating it as D. Yeah. Now, but whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham, already introduced to you as Della. All these are simple words. Now, let's start the explanation. What does it mean? So, the Dillingham had been flung to breeze. That means before. Okay, it's a scene before. So they were quite good, financially good. They were at well settled, we can say. Okay, so when was it? It was before, when they had got $30 per week. So when James Dillingham had traveled and probably he was working outside, and there he was earning $30 per week. But suddenly there was a small reduction, or there was a reduce of $10. Okay, that was his salary was $30 and it had been reduced to $20. So they are actually emphasizing the entire para on how did they manage, like what were their mentality during at that period of time. Okay, so what does those sentence explain is that after getting shrunk, like his salary was shrunk, that is his salary was reduced by $10, yet whenever he goes home back, he had worked. Actually, when he was working, he had worked with his full modest, he was completely sincere. Okay, but then when he came back, he and his wife, that is Della, were thinking to contract, that means to reduce their life luxuries. They were not so luxurious, but still they reduced to become to lead a small, simpler life. They had planned it together to lead a smaller, little simpler life. Okay, they started maybe reducing with their unnecessary expenses, or they did not buy anything which is they did not need actually, right? Which they did not actually, they did wish for, but then to reduce their expenses, they just held their their financial criteria to handle that situation. So they just held on their more luxurious life, and then still they were happy. Like once, even though there was a reduction and they had planned to reduce their lifestyle, like come to a simpler life, still when James after work goes home, enters the flat, still there was a call, like his wife Della calls him James, runs to him and just gives him a good hug. So this shows, though they had underwent a bit more what like before, as I told you, $30 and $20, there's a long gap, right? For $10 they had reduced that good salary, like. So even though there was some financial criteria, like they had some sufferings, but still there were happiness. So again, it's showing the difference between the materialistic life and their true love, right? Then finally it says, which is all very good. That means all that circumstance that they are dealing with, and their the way of facing those things are very positive way. So that was all well and good. So now let me just relate you it in our present situation, right? All after the lockdowns, like before we were earning very well, at least quite well, and then suddenly all the things, all the shops, factories, industries, schools, everything got shut down all of a sudden for almost 6 months, right? 6 months there were no salaries, there were no jobs, anything. So what did everybody do? Everybody, including the ones which earn daily, on daily basis, are labors to the one which are the richest person, you can say, everyone were facing and undergoing the same situation and struggle, right? If we had 5 rupees of difficulty in managing, the people who earn more had a 5 crore rupees of handling problems. So everywhere there were such issues. So but still we fight it, and we just overcame the situation, right? We are now coping up with our situation, we are fighting, and we are like just thriving through in, and we are breaking that the huge what you can say, a boundary that has been created by the COVID, and we are just breaking it, and we are going forward, right? Similarly, it's the same situation there. Now how did we manage even in our this period? We just reduced our expenses, right? Before we ate 3 chocolates, now we are reduced to 1 chocolate having a week. So similarly, they, when they had $30, now reduced to $20. $10 is not a big not a small amount of reduction, right? That's a very big amount. So maybe you can see that $8 was a flat. So flat rent were $8, so almost $10, right? So it's like, how did they manage? So they have managed, still they were happy. Yeah, so let's wind up our class. I think this is enough for today. Just a description. Do you need a description from first? So I'll just go like a story, okay? I don't want to read again by line and make you bored. So I'll just refresh. So what you have to do, similarly as we have done in chemistry also, I'm requesting you all to close your books, keep it aside, just close your eyes, sit in the front, yeah, relax, take a good deep breath. Yeah, let's start. Close your eyes. So our chapter name was The Gift of Magi. I told you the name was derived, or he got into that name title, who? O. Henry, the author, by our religious book, that is Bible, where there were 3 wise men who came from Persia to Bethlehem, all the way through to Bethlehem to gift our newborn Jesus. So from there on, they started the procedure called gifting during Christmas Eve, right? So the 3 wise men were called Magi. So they, like, that name or that word is the one that has been taken for this lesson. Okay, so it is The Gift of Magi, written by O. Henry. So the first para was all about the situation that was Della going through. That is, she wanted to save money for some particular reason, and she tried her sent person to put her full efforts to it by bargaining. That is, coming out of her character and bargaining with the butcherman, with the grocer, with the vegetable man, just asking them to reduce the price until they got angry on her. They started scolding or suing her out, away. Till that point she started bargaining, and she saved all that amount together. And which day that day arrived? Which day was it? The Christmas Eve arrived, that is the previous day of Christmas, and she just took all the saved amount and she started counting it, and it was how much? It was $1.87, out of which 60 cents were in pennies. Pennies means coins, as I told you. And then what we could see, that it was not sufficient for her. She was sad about her savings, that it wasn't sufficient. And in the second para we can see her grievance for it and the sad situation she's going through. She had the helplessness that she was facing. She just fell down and she started crying aloud, and also there was a description about the flat that she was staying. A very shabby, she had a very shabby sofa, that is a very dirty sofa, and her surroundings. And we also saw that it was $8 well furnished flat. Still it had outer look of a beggar's flat. Okay, yeah. And next we went to the third para, which explains the ambience of our flat, right? The entrance had a letterbox where there were no one or no letters put in, or that indicates they had no relatives or no one to care about them, and no one to show up concern towards them, so which is indicating the loneliness in that flat. The next they had a doorbell beside the letterbox where no one had took a chance to ring it. That means there were no visitors or no relatives to come and to look about and care about them. And finally it shows the name board which had a name. What was the name? It had Mr. James Dellingham Young. So that was the name of the house owner, no person, the main person over there. But who is he? He is the husband of Della. Now, whom Della calls him James, right? Jim, right? With love. So the third para is describing about the ambience of the flat, right? Which had a letterbox in front of their entrance where there were no letters put in, which means there were no buddy to write a letter to them. And next they had a doorbell which had no one had tried or had come forth to just ring at least once, which means they had no relatives or visitors to their house, so which actually indicates the loneliness that they are facing. No one to care and concern, to put some concern towards them, show some love towards them, right? It shows a pity situation where they have completely left alone. And then there was a board, a name board with a name that is Mr. James Dellingham Young. That was a name of Della's husband, whom she lovingly called Jim. So that's the third. And then when it comes to the fourth para, it says about fourth and fifth para, it actually says about their previous life, right? Previous life in the sense the circumstance or the situation, how, like the period of their well-being, we can see. Like when James had a work and his salary was $30, and they had a good prospered life with full of luxuries and happiness filled life. And then later on, a sudden decrease in the salary of $10, right? A sudden decrease of $10 in their salary was a big hit for them, but still did they face it in a positive manner. How we could see the positiveness or optimistic view of Della and James, right? Whenever how did they manage? They just controlled themselves from their expenses, and they reduced their expenses, and they just started to lead a simpler life, right? And how did Della react to Jim was a important point there, because when a person is in sad situation, it's very important to understand the person and to deal with them, right? And the opposite person's reaction makes a lot of effect on them. So how did Della react when Jim came home after the work? Della just called him Jim and ran towards him and just hugged him, which actually makes him feel better, right? To forget the struggles and get into happiness, right? So finally they were happy. Though they had sufferings, they were happy. That 1% happiness or that 10% happiness out of 100 was hidden there. Realizing again, what is it telling us about? Realizing about the difference between the materialistic life and the true love they had. So open your eyes. I think now you would have recalled everything, right? But still, I say you should open your book and just go through once. I repeat, it just takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes maximum. Now you have already written your meanings on top of your words, right? People who have written, it would be very easy. Who have not written and just heard, it's really difficult for you again. So let's wind up the class. So that's it. So take care, be safe, and bye.